And most people are terrified by that because they identify as the runner. I am the achiever, the perfectionist, the performer, the pleaser. But who are you when you stop? Well, then you are the failure. Then you are the feelings that you have run away from. What is happening is that you can't go back to this society, to your internal society. And you have to look at yourself. You don't even know any better. You don't know how good you can feel. In the past week, I made 2 videos about internal family system and how the dynamic is between certain parts of your psyche. Because whether you talk about the manager, let's say the fascist dictator inside of you, or the rebel, they are all basically wanting to avoid you from getting in contact with the inner child. Because the inner child, the pure aspect of you, the little child, the emotional part, is seen as a danger by the psyche. So all of these aspects, and over time it's going to be a lot more than just 3, but let's say 10,000 parts of you, they form a society together with relationships. Some people are emphasized and other people are locked away. And when I say it like this, we can see it already in the external world. As within, so without. So we have a society right now that is completely dysregulated. People are stressed for all kinds of reasons that they have no idea of. But what if that isn't really an accident? What if it's the purpose? Because if you are dysregulated, you become highly controllable. And that is when you enter survival mode, like your focus gets very narrow. The dysregulation comes from not sitting and being with your emotions. So pushing emotions away is something that society is sort of thriving on. And it's teaching this. When I was in school, I had to go to school when I was 4 years old. All the kids were crying and the teacher didn't have time for them. So they were there basically all sitting very dysregulated. And if they didn't have help at home, then they probably would all be traumatized. And traumatized people are very controllable because then there is something like coping mechanisms. A coping mechanism is something that you do in order to avoid the internal feelings. And some of these coping mechanisms can be monetized. So how does it feel when you need to run after something for the profit of someone else? And what if that someone else then actively tries to traumatize you so that you are going to pursue exactly what the other wants? And it's not that straightforward with a few individuals, but if we make these groups larger, then this is exactly what is happening. And then at a certain point, people get a chronic illness. Why, oh why? Just suddenly out of the blue. That's what we tell ourselves. Because it's hard to change, when you have been someone who has been dysregulated his entire life. You had to come up with all kinds of strategies to deal with that, and some of them were basically propaganded to you. Then you identify with these parts and these aspects. You identify with being a certain someone, let's say, being hands-on, being very sporty, being wealthy, maybe showing that off, maybe being very smart. There are lots of different types of ways in our society that you can, in a stressful way, outrun your internal feelings. So going back to those feelings, we have, let's say to start very basic, we have fight or flight, fear and anger, or anger and fear, the other way around. Anger and fear are both survival mechanisms to make you run for your life or fight for your life. So that means there is a danger, or you're perceived to be a danger. But when you don't finish that response, then that response is going to stay hidden inside of your body, because the emotion, which is of course overwhelming, and if you couldn't execute fight or flight, then it's like still inside of you, that emotion has to be suppressed because you are going to enter the freeze response of the nervous system. And it's a highly uncomfortable state. In the freeze response, you also get symptoms such as fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, depersonalization, migraine, chronic fatigue. And when you're for a longer period of time in the fight or flight mode, you also get symptoms. So what we see is that you entered the freeze response briefly, but every time the emotion wants to come up, because that's what emotions do. They're energy emotion. They want to leave your body. But every time you feel drawn to do a certain behavior to overcompensate the feeling inside of you, let's say fear. There's nothing greater than fear for people who want to control you. So if you are feeling afraid, then all you need to do is maybe run away to safety or feel that danger, feel that fear through. But instead, we can, or they can, tell you to get an insurance or buy this, save more money, go to live in a bigger house, and then they just make sure that the prices are being raised so that you have to pay a mortgage that you can hardly afford, just to make you stay in survival mode, because the fear is never going to be resolved. And that means basically that you're going to be a slave. Isn't that weird? Because I was trying to prepare you a little bit with the video about the inner dictator. The inner dictator is the manager inside of you that has become a tyrant that is just dictating you to do certain things. That's how people treat themselves. And as within, so without. And when you're having a chronic illness, then you're basically embodying the inner child, which is actually very, very good. Because the inner child needs to come to the light. But until that is happening, it stays hidden inside of your body as a form of stress. We store stress in our muscles, fascia, tissue. And bit by bit, layer by layer, the stress can come up. But when it does, we perceive it as a danger, and then the limbic system creates all these types of symptoms. Then we don't really have to look for which emotion is underneath that. Because it's there. It is right there. People are messaging me and emailing me that they feel so unworthy or unheard, unseen. The problem, however, is that when you do it like that, you project that internal state inside of you that has been there for, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades. You project that on your current situation, and that has nothing to do with it. And you can make your thinking rational again by really looking what's going on. What is actually happening? Why am I running my entire life? Most people run after money, even in the healing industry. Like, I was so disappointed by the healing industry that they were just as any other business on this planet. So then a quote from Mark Twain. He said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system. For if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." So do you understand the monetary system? There's a reason that the media is not telling us about the monetary system. And most of you probably know, but we're so caught up in freeze that we don't really know what to do. So, small summary, money doesn't actually exist. As soon as you go to the bank for a loan, they just click on a button, the money is instantly there, and then you have to pay interest over it with money that doesn't exist yet. And therefore, bankruptcy is inherent to the system. That means that it's a pyramid scheme. Have you ever joined a pyramid scheme? It can be cool for the ones on top, but not so cool for the ones a little bit lower, trying to reach for that success. But who wants to reach for success? Someone who feels a failure. So it's a coping mechanism, again, that we are being pushed into. And I can tell you, no matter how much money you have, you'll never feel like a success. Because as soon as you get that money, the limit on the horizon will just go a little bit further. And you won't need to become even richer, make more money, make more figures, become a millionaire, become a billionaire. It's never enough. That's the thing with these coping mechanisms. It's like a stick of a carrot right in front of us, and we're trying our whole life desperately to reach the carrot, but we'll never reach it. And that's because we are running away from a feeling inside of us. And then having a chronic illness makes you stop running. And most people are terrified by that because they identify as the runner. I am the achiever, the perfectionist, the performer, the pleaser. But who are you when you stop? Well, then you are the failure. Then you are the feelings that you have run away from. Then the feelings that you stored inside of your body when you were like 4 years old come to the surface. Maybe extreme fear, maybe rage of not wanting to go to school. Maybe shame as well, because as soon as you start suppressing your own needs, you are basically telling yourself that you are not good enough. And other people can say that as well, but you are also saying that towards yourself. So how do we make shame then good, right? Shame is basically the inner child inside of you that doesn't get any attention. And the solution for that is attention. And the solution for fear is also attention. And anger also. Feelings just want to be felt. Fear and anger can also be regulated via EMDR, that's expressing the fight or flight response. That means to run to safety or to fight a danger, to complete that and then go back to homeostasis or the parasympathetic state of the nervous system. And when you're young, you're still able to have a form of homeostasis, but it doesn't last long before you're spending most of your time in the fight or flight mode. And that's not any more fight or flight about the initial emotions, but it's to run away from the emotions. And then all that they need to do is to give you a stick of something that you have to reach for. And it's actually very logical that they do that, because who is they? That's we as well. That's people selling you stuff. Like me. Because we're all part of this monetary system in which there is not enough, which is representing our internal state. There is not enough of joy, spare time, self-worth. We have to keep going, always more. That's the cycle. That's probably what you would like to go back to, right? Oh, I wish I was recovered because then I was like a marathon runner. It's like, whew. Do you really want to be a marathon runner? Like how much fun is that actually? And all the other things that you did, like how good did that make you feel? Like you don't really get a chronic disease out of nothing, This is not something that's just a coincidence of catching a virus and then you get it. Like, wait, no. You get it because you've gone too far. Nature has sort of a self-correcting mechanism here to stop you from going any further. And you can make this lesson painful by keep wanting to go back. Every day when you have a little bit of energy, you try to push through yourself. And you fall back. And it's like, okay, maybe the next day you're ready. And it takes, on average, 2 years for people to even begin with starting to disidentify with who they think that they are, which is based on outrunning themselves. And when you look at the outside world, you see more of the same. Look at the traffic, look at people having jobs. It's all fight or flight. Everyone is stressed. And look at a day of society. Imagine that you have kids, maybe you already have them. It's like in the morning, they're stressed, you have to wake them up, you have to dress them up, make sure that everything was ready, prepare their lunch and breakfast, bring them to school, and then you have like a moment to relax. And then you've got to go to work. And then, who's regulating the children at that time? Probably not the teacher, because they don't have a clue themselves. They don't get that. I mean, I actually studied to become a teacher. There was nothing about regulation for children in there. Like, I promise you. And there was knowledge about the needs from children. Like, it was very precise, child psychology. Children need safety, competence, relationships, and another thing that I forget right now. And you know what? Let's not give them that. Or let's pretend that we give them a little bit of that. And when I was starting to doubt this, nobody really took me serious. Like, huh? How are you questioning a system that's been going on for 200 years? But the system is failing. I mean, look at society. All these wars that are going on. These are also reflections of our internal state, because everything comes to the light. And probably these wars need to be there because we've been printing so much money, and without a war, this industry would lose money. That would be the bankrupt of the entire system. So then we need, like, everyone needs to keep going with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then the next politician is trying to promise you things. But what I think that they're doing is they're just trying to keep it going because they know it's already gone. Just like your health, like, you're probably still a pioneer, and the ones that had chronic fatigue syndrome 10 years, 20 or 30 years ago, they were like the very early ones. What is happening is that you can't go back to this society, to your internal society, and you have to look at yourself. You have to ask yourself why, with everything that you desire, everything that you want to do. Why? And just assume that it is a coping mechanism that you have been programmed to do by society in order to be a perfect citizen. Who wants to be a perfect citizen? Someone who feels bad inside. Why do they feel bad inside? Because they don't feel or connect with themselves or their aspects. When I was in a meditative state for a very, very long time, just meditating every day, I started to remember life before this planet, life before this life, even the creation of the entire universe. I started to remember everything. And I also saw that my part here is to make sure that society will break down. And how do we do that? We do that by healing peoples. Because when you are no longer with a dysregulated nervous system, you are no longer going to keep up with stuff that is very stressful and profitable for others. So instead of not being able to regulate your children and send them to somewhere else so you can work to pay off a mortgage that is way too high about some stones, you're going to find alternatives. Because the most valuable thing in your life is not money. It's not the house. It's you. It's time. Time with yourself. It's feeling good. And have you felt good? Because, we're not aware of that. When you grow up in a society that is so extremely stressful and dysregulated, you don't even know any better. You don't know how good you can feel. We have some fragments of a memory when we were children. But still, you were already dysregulated by the age of 4. And I think that most people can't remember themselves being younger. And that's because most parents are not regulated, so they can't regulate their children. But there's also another force that is sort of like parasiting on this planet to make sure that wars keep going, that people keep being dysregulated. And I stumbled upon this group of people when I was only 5 years old, while I was participating involuntarily, by the way, in a satanic ritual where world leaders are being groomed at a very young age to become dysregulated. And what they do then is they try to sort of, to mold them into what they want, like to mold them with the urge of the hunger for power, for example. But who wants power? That's someone who's very weak. So instead of keep going, always more, we have to take a step back and ask ourselves why. And I've only been at one of these satanic rituals, but it was more than enough because I was completely broken after that. But I couldn't really tell that because I didn't have the words, and I was in such an extreme freeze response that I didn't even remember. So I started remembering things when I was healing. Like just a few years ago, I started remembering what was going on. Okay, this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And then I heard similar stories from children from my neighborhood. It's like, okay, so it was actually very real because, you start doubting yourself. And if you would have told me this 10 years ago, I probably would have laughed. I would have told you 10 years ago, or maybe 11 now, that I wasn't traumatized. And that's because the idea of trauma is always for people that we are, like the victim of an earthquake and that people die around us. The obvious trauma, the big T trauma, so to say. But then you get the help to dysregulate yourself. But there are thousands of moments of small T trauma, which is actually adding up over time. And the habit of suppressing your emotions because they're just too overwhelming keeps going and going and going until we're all dysregulated. And it's not like, I've tried to offer emotional healing for everyone by putting out all the guided meditations. But the thing is that when you just have a chronic illness and you want to heal, you basically want that from the desire to go back to your old stressful life. So you put stress on it and you can't heal out of a desire because desire is stress. So you want to heal out of stress to go back to stress because you're stressed against the current situation. It's all resistance. So what happened? People they just skip the beginning part. Like that's for the losers. Let's go to the end part of the program, and then, what happened then is an extreme freeze response because you're not ready for that. Sometimes this happens as well when people do the slightest of safety tools, for example, just one tiny bit of safety, and their system shuts down because then the old emotions can come up. And if you haven't made them safe yet, then you can't handle them. You can't process them. That's why the biggest part and the most important part of the program, of the release program, is to make these emotions safe, to write about them, to journal about them, to think about them, just in a small way, so that you can tell your limbic system that you're actually okay with it. So that means that most people are not ready to heal. They don't want to heal. Like healing is coming from the word whole, so becoming whole again, wholing yourself. Most people want to do everything but that. And I know that the symptoms are annoying. So most people haven't listened to themselves for, let's say, a decade or even longer. Then you get these symptoms because at a certain point when you've entered sort of a light phase in your life, then just everything wants to come to the surface. And then you can't hold it. And you get these symptoms. What do people do then is they really take it seriously. And that's the exact wrong reaction. It's also not the wrong reaction to push through, but the right direction is to really feel and connect with your body and to see what's going on. In my own healing journey, I went through to breathwork retreats where you do like hours of breathwork every day, and the idea was to get into the freeze response, to make to make all the emotions come up and to get this reaction, to get extreme migraines and vertigo. I had it all. So I was walking, I just fell down, nausea, vomiting, extreme mind-body symptoms. But I did that because I knew that this was the fastest way to heal my trauma. I wanted everything to come up, and I knew I wasn't afraid of the symptoms. I was just laughing at them. And I knew that when you have the symptoms, when I had them, then it was so easy for them to be released. Then I just had to find them in my body between the throat and my bladder, breathe through it. They were there, my thoughts were already there. My thoughts were just telling me about the things that I wanted to reach to avoid feeling what was going on. Like it was so obvious. But in order to be able to do that, you need to have a little bit more preparation work, and you need to have some more experience. So you are falling apart, and society is also falling apart. Like, we don't have to destroy society, because society will destroy itself. Let's just like we have been destroying ourselves. And that's for the better, because we can't even imagine how good we can feel. So please don't fight yourself. Please don't fight the outside world. But make conscious choices about the things that you actually do want. Do you want to have that mortgage? Do you want to live in that way that you don't have free time and any connection with your children? What if there is another way possible? Maybe right now you're still a pioneer and it's a bit weird and you have to go through the rules like I am doing. But eventually we will create the new world by not accepting the old world. There is a new paradigm of healing that comes when we completely abandon society, when we forgive the people who also misled us and abused us, or put us in directions of coping mechanisms because they were also in a place of scarcity. So they wanted to trigger scarcity inside of you and then immediately offer the solution, which is a product. We have to understand that that was also something that happened internally. And then healing is about becoming whole again. So accepting these parts, accepting the inner dictator, accepting the inner manipulator. And then we can also see it in the external world. And we really look at it. Okay, this is going on. This happened as well inside of myself. So I wish you a beautiful healing journey. Thanks for watching this podcast. And remember, just breathe. Everything is going to be all right. Stop the resistance. Life is a sort of like a self-correcting mechanism. And by being here, the self-correcting mechanism is working. This is the way. Bye.